Okay, I wonder if we could have a motion to come back into regular session.
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Howman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bray,
Yes.
Alderman Matthews,
Yes.
Alderman Sage,
Yes.
Alderman Malamoy.
Yes.
Alderman Burgess,
Yes.
Alderman Painter,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Harmon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And under the return to open special session, we have items 8, 9, and 10. Item 8 is consideration of the 2017 tax levy estimate for the Bloomington Public Library. And we have a brief presentation, approximately 5 minutes, by Gene Hamilton, who's the director, and then about 15-minute council discussion. And I'm glad to see so many people from the Bloomington Public Library Board in the audience, including the chair. Come, if you want to come forward too, if you have something to add. Okay. Thank you, Gene. And thank you, Alex. Go ahead.
Thank you. One of the library's 5 strategic goals is to administer a cost-effective public library, and the library staff and board have worked very hard to successfully do that year after year by continuing to look for ways to reduce expenses and do more with less. And as you'll see in the fiscal year 19 budget adopted by the library board, this budget reflects those cost-saving measures again in all budget areas, allowing for the entire requested budget increase of $140,493 to be transferred to the capital fund. And if a commitment is made to move forward with the expansion project that we have talked about, those funds would be used to further develop design plans. If a commitment was not made to move forward with the expansion project, there are still repairs and renovation or replacements that need to happen in our existing building that total about $2 million over the course of about 5 years. And some of those things include replacing a roof, replacing return air ducts, air handler, carpet, broken and worn furniture, driveway areas, and lighting. So I'll turn it over to Alex.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to give you some historical perspective from the board since we look at this long-term, looking at the strategy. So looking back, so over the past 10 years, the library has been tasked by the City Council and also by the Library Board to look at our expansion and exploring these options of expansion. Specifically also running a lean budget while we're doing this, making cuts and saving money in reserves in preparation for an expansion. And so from our perspective, we've made good on that direction from City Council and also from the Library Board. Specifically, the library continues to do more with less, and you'll hear that repeated throughout this. And specifically, when you look at the documents that we've presented, you look at the Bloomington Public Library having one of the lowest tax rates of peer communities and peer libraries in Central Illinois. But on top of that, we still continue to outperform almost all of them in regards to circulation and other metrics through there. So there's that idea of doing more with less. The other piece of this, unlike schools, community colleges, ISU, the city itself, we're mainly overwhelmingly supported only by property taxes. And so when you look at that as our only source of revenue, and you look at your charts that you have in front of you, we've virtually had a flat tax over that time. But we still made those hard choices to cut our own budget over the past 10 years, and that's been at the expense of growing programs and also deferring maintenance. The other piece, and you saw this in a quote that we included in there, that there's empirical evidence that usage tracks investment. If libraries receive more public funds, more people use them. And if governments invest less in its libraries, as they have since 2009, fewer people visit them. Though the drop in visits from disinvestment isn't as strong as the rise from investment would be. Lastly, I'd just like to say I couldn't be prouder of the library staff and the library board, specifically of what they've done over the past several years and their dedication to running an efficient operating budget, and again, doing more with less. But this model isn't sustainable of what we have currently. Our goal for all of you is in preparation for your budget discussions in 2018. We will use these funds to provide you a comprehensive site plan so you can evaluate all your options strategically. I think that's really important in regards to what I have seen from your city council meetings, but also some of the discussions you've been having at the budget in large. Lastly, libraries have always been a place where families, students, adult learners can invest in themselves. With this proposal, you have 3 library boards who support and believe this is the time for you to support the library and invest in the library, and in turn, invest in our community and our community's future. So thank you.
And just to clarify, approximately how many people go through the library? Isn't it about 1,000 a day?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Council, comments? Alderman Sage.
Alex, we talked a little bit about this in the meeting that we had, and I continue to get a lot of inquiries about what's going on with the library expansion. And since it does kind of have some contact or some touch point with the budget, can you, I guess I want to be very clear on what the direction of the library board is, given our meeting back in June in terms of expansion. So, I mean, can you,
Yeah, of course.
what is the direction of the board, or what is the understanding of the board, maybe from that council meeting, or however you want to frame it?
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. So as you all recall, we had our joint meeting in June where we talked about our plans so far and our extensive work that we've been doing here. Our feedback from all of you is the majority of you feel that we should be expanding and we should look at those expansion plans, and we've been looking at those at our current location through that.
So where the library is now?
Yes,
Okay.
currently, yes.
Thank you, Alex.
Just to clarify, though, that was before the Downtown Task Force began its analysis.
That's correct.
And I don't mean to put you in the middle of something that's different, but that's obviously something where they were gathering information that was consistent with our comprehensive plan, that was consistent with our downtown plan, and they came up with an option as one of many other options.
So there's a lot of outstanding items that we feel from the library board and library staff that we would like clear direction from the city council moving forward. One of them could be the recommendations from the task force that all of you will eventually review and evaluate, but even more important would be the capital improvement project plan, the CIP, and what you plan to do with that. Also your budget discussions that are coming up next year. I think with all of those things, it would be to our benefit and your benefit if we had those items all holistically to look at strategically, how do all these things fit into place. So I think there's a lot more exploration that has to happen, not only with those documents, but then also what we would like to provide to you. And as we've discussed, we want to bring you that comprehensive site plan, and that's what the levy today is going to accomplish for all of you.
Irrespective of what those other details might be. Okay. Any other, Alderwoman Schmidt?
So I really do think we need to get some more clarity about where this expansion is taking place and what the tax levy increase would go towards. And obviously, I live my life as a librarian. I get the strong return on investment that we get out of our public library. But I do hear a lot of confusion from the population at large about where the library is going to be. We've spent a lot of money, you have spent a lot of money on a site plan at your existing site. We've spent money in purchasing property and demolishing it, and really I think building on a vision that Mayor Renner put forth in 2015 for developing the campus south of the library. So I hear questions from people wondering where we're going to be and how can we as a council explain that we'll give you more money but we're not really sure where you're going to be, I guess is what it comes down to. So I think it's important that we have some clarification on that, and I don't want to take away from the Downtown Task Force. I completely understand the concept of the Catalyst project, but it kind of feels like the library has been sort of put in the middle of this, and I personally think that's unfair to the library. So I'd like a little bit of clarification about that. I haven't heard anybody talk about the downtown, the new downtown location as being really good necessarily for the library. It's about a lot of other things. So I personally would like to have that clarity.
Mr. Rasmussen, we, and then maybe I'll turn to the task force chair. I should know this, but when are we having the the actual presentation, or have we scheduled that from the task force?
Go ahead, Amelia.
I don't know that it's been set. I think the last time you and I touched base, it would be set in December. And all I can say is that I think that the task force and its members are very excited to present to council the ideas of the task force, which does touch on the library's location. That is one aspect of the task force report. And I think that we look forward to discussing that and explaining some of the rationale there and whether or not council will choose to take that in another direction and explore it further is something obviously that is entirely up to the council. And I think even the task force understands that as of right now, the library is moving forward in a specific direction based on prior guidance, and we wouldn't expect them to change direction, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And just also to clear this is a very small portion of the budget task force, downtown task forces.
Yeah, that's a very different task force.
I have a very different task force. So
Yeah,
you were lucky enough to be on both. So this is only a piece of that, but it is relevant, obviously, to the to the library. We did have an informal committee of the whole poll before you began your work, which is, I think, what Alderman Sage was referring to. But irrespective of that, whether it's fixing your own building, the bargain basement option, whether it's expanding in your current location, or whether it's partnering with Connect Transit or whatever at a different location, you're talking about a very small amount that you're starting to budget for capital needs. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Ultimately, one thing I'd bring up is we've had a lot of task forces. The library has had a library expansion task force that, Johnny, I think you're well aware of. And those are recommendations, and they're exploratory. What we'd like to do is move forward to that. We feel like we're at the 11th hour with this. We've been working on this for a very long time. We've invested a lot of money and invested a lot of person power to get something to you and get something that is tangible that you can look at and say, option A is a phased approach that looks like this. It's going to take this much to do this. It's going to impact these other city departments, and you can evaluate that against option B. And so that's where we are with all of this, is that we don't want to make assumptions of misinformation. What we'd like to do is actually give you hard data and facts based on engineering reports, architectural reports, planning reports that we would like to provide to you before your budget discussion so you can evaluate that holistically and it's not piecemeal as we go through there. And I think, again, we're at the very end of this. We just want to make sure you have the community overall's best interests in mind when we think of how do we get to the next generation, that next piece of something that could be really, really important, and it could be a catalyst for our whole community, just not just downtown.
Alderwoman Painter.
Well, I agree with you, and the library has been woefully underfunded for years, and I really think that you actually do need more of a tax piece, but until this whole deal with moving the library downtown is laid to rest, I will not vote for raising another penny for it because, quite frankly, from what I've heard from all of my constituents, moving the library downtown has all the appeal that the Coliseum had, and I'm not going to touch that one. So, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Blatt.
Thank you. And thank you, Alex and Jeannie, for bringing this forward and having this conversation. I don't think anybody really would doubt the value of libraries. I mean, you can't get a job now without having access to a computer, and it's definitely something that this community needs. And I just want to highlight something that we've talked before about publicly.
If you could just clarify, that there are a large number of people of that 1,000 who come to the library to use the equipment
Absolutely.
to apply for jobs.
It's a lifeline.
Just so that we can clarify why that matters.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I think it's a critical institution. Nobody's questioning that. I just want to, we've talked about this publicly before, but I want to highlight it again. You mentioned circulation and some of those hard metrics, and I think that's great. We should look at some of these things. But I want to be clear that as somebody who's looking at this at a higher level, I don't like to think about it as just metrics, because when that happens, we don't take risks to reach more people. And, I'm thinking about the bookmobile kerfuffle a few years ago. We want to encourage more folks to get involved. I mean, we talked about getting Spanish language books into some of our historic core. That may start out as a small program with a handful of people, and it may not look good on a balance sheet, but that has a immeasurable public good that I think is critical for our community. So I just want, as we have these conversations about budgets and numbers, to not lose sight of that fact that I think that, under your leadership have really taken that seriously. And I wanted you to know that publicly I support that wholeheartedly, and to see more of that approach. From where I sit, I know that there's been some confusion, but it's not really confusing from where I sit. To me, the library is staying in its current location and expanding. In my personal opinion, would be a joint city hall library, but that doesn't seem to have much traction here on the council. But I appreciate bringing this forward. I would love to see maybe somehow if we could rig it up where, because it's not a major increase, but nobody's jonesing for a property tax increase, and when we talk about this, we don't have like here's what it's going to look like in 5 years, or here's what the library is going to be in 10 years. And I think that, as Alderman Sage will say, that line of sight is so blurry that the public hasn't bought it in the way that I think they would otherwise. And that's kind of the sense I've gotten from the constituents that I've spoken with regarding this topic. So maybe in the interim, maybe we find a way to maybe lower our levy a little bit and maybe move the library, because it's very complicated. Only in Illinois would you find such an interesting governmental structure. Just so residents, because I can make the argument to somebody that, you're paying less than somebody in Urbana, but they don't live in Urbana, they live in Bloomington, and how we figure out the budget, I think is good for the residents. So I appreciate the hard work, and I hope that we can ultimately give that clear direction to the community, because I think ultimately the community supports library expansion. They need it, they require it, and it's going to make our community a 21st century community and attract businesses. It's huge. So thank you for all your hard work.
Alderman Milwamboy.
Okay, thank you. Alex Cheney, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we met about a couple weeks ago or 10 days ago, right? Okay. And I very much appreciated the opportunity to take a look at the library, and I go in some areas that I normally wouldn't go into, in the back rooms where the staff is working. I definitely agree that some of the maintenance and some of the infrastructure repair is absolutely needed. The things that I saw in there, the carpets and the rooms where the staff is crammed, and some of them, I think, would, sometimes make it difficult, to access, for some folks. So I think, that's definitely needed. There's no question about that. I also do appreciate the work that the Downtown Task Force has done. Definitely shows, some creativity and willingness to think outside the box. But that said, I think, one of the things that I've always told people is that's important to me is credibility, okay, as a council. So I do feel that we've gone in one direction. Many of us have agreed with that direction, and to now change in the middle of the game when we've told residents that this is where we're going and we're making some acquisitions in order to go in that direction, and to move back in a different direction, I think is a little bit difficult to be able to explain, and can lead us to lose credibility, which is something that we've always, worked so hard for. So I think in that sense, my personal preference is that we keep going, with the course that we've already set. Because we've already spent a lot of money to do that. And just on the subject of, libraries in the downtown, that's just my personal preference. I think I prefer a library in an area that's not as busy. The way I picture libraries is a place where people can go outside, and lay around in the grass when it's nice, grab a nice book and read, and it feels peaceful, The downtown area seems to be a little too busy for me in order for me to have a place where people are supposed to relax and read, and coming out and looking out for cars and, kids and things like that. I just don't know that I favor that location for that reason, but that's just me. Thank you.
Alderman Matthey.
Thank you for all the work you guys have done. I just want to get clarification. This, the proposed increase, you were actually talking about using that money to give us better line of sight and clarity as to what the building will look like in that 5-year plan that Scott was talking about, right? Okay, I just, the way that it was presented, I thought maybe I misunderstood the first time. So this increase, those dollars will give us a better picture of what a library could look like in 5 years. Because we've seen some generic outdoor landscaping plots that, like right now, but not what the front of a building could look like, what the interior, how the redesign might work. We haven't seen any of that sort of stuff. So that's what you're proposing to do, right?
Correct. Unless we hear from you that you'd like us to halt the project, that there's no appetite for raising money for that, then we can say, okay, this is for the repairs and replacements that need to happen in our existing building. So that is something that we would like direction from you. It doesn't have to be today, but before we would actually spend that money, we would want to check back in with you and make sure we're spending it on exactly what the direction that you're giving us.
Okay. I mean, my personal preference would be I would like to get a better idea of what, when, and where, and how this is all going to work. So to me, this would be a good spend of those dollars trying to figure that part out of what this all looks like. I know there's still some other outstanding questions, but I think that's an important piece of all this going forward. Before we launch into any kind of a bigger capital campaign, we need more of a solid idea of what you guys are thinking about. So I think I would support this completely. So.
And I think that's something too, as you talk about a capital campaign, I think those more detailed drawings are essential as we move forward with our fundraising commitment, because that will be a very useful tool as we're talking to potential donors for that.
Just to clarify, your private fundraising effort would be enhanced.
I mean, you have to have something to inspire people, right? You have to show them, building a library or doing anything like this is a once-in-a-generation decision of how this is going to happen. If we make a decision in the next couple years and this gets done, nobody's going to talk about redoing the library till 50 or 60 probably. So,
Our existing building was built in 1976.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So we're not talking about it for 40 or 50 more years. So we need to be sure we're doing it the right way now. Okay. So thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Yes.
For clarification, so tonight the council is being asked to approve the estimate of the tax levy. This isn't the actual tax levy. So you can still come back and modify this when we do our final levy. But what this tells everyone tonight is whether or not you're going to go above 5%, which would then trigger a truth in taxation hearing. And what's being proposed is not above 5%, but essentially tonight, again, you're just setting that estimate. So just wanted to make sure that's clear. Obviously, what's been proposed by the library staff is an increase, and your other alternative would be to do a motion to keep the levy flat, and we've got that amount if somebody wants to make that motion as well.
And just to clarify, roughly what would this mean per average household?
$4.17 for
Okay.
the average home value of $165,000.
Okay, and then this isn't exactly related, but we're keeping our tax levy flat, which means we usually decrease it by a couple bucks. So at the end of the day, Patty Lynn, this is kind of tapping into your the next question. Roughly, how much would our levy go down? Because we're keeping it, not levy, the bill for an average home, would that go down for like $1 or something?
It would actually stay flat this year, but it is just $4.
Okay. Okay. Oh, so we're not going down at all in terms of the actual dollar amount? Okay. 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 Anything else? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. At this point, we have a couple of different options that have been presented. Is there a motion?
Can I ask a quick question before the motion?
Of course.
So And I know Alderwoman Schmidt alluded to this earlier, but did we get the question answered as far as what exactly the 140,000 is going to do? You know, the direction that we're going into. I feel like we're still.
It's for, as I understood it, again, Jeannie, come on up.
Is it for
It's
expansion?
It's for capital improvement to be determined by us.
Right.
Is it at the current location?
At the current location, or is it?
Or is it somewhere else? Regardless of where that is, that's a separate decision that we would make at a later point. Mr. Juergens or Rasmussen, is that a fair assessment? Yeah, okay.
And I believe the commitment of the board is that we would spend that money in the way that aligned with the way that you give us the direction to.
So we would
that
still
would
have an
be-
opportunity down the line to be able to say,
Correct.
this is where you're going.
Right. So the two options we propose is what Alderman Matthew was talking about with the more comprehensive site plan, or if we decide that that's not the direction we want to go, there's no appetite within the next 5 years to raise that money, kind of tied to that 5-year CIP, then we would need to spend that money for repairs in our existing buildings, so no expansion.
Alderman Sage.
So Jeannie, you got to help me out here. We had the meeting in June, two boards, the council and the library board, and we said the majority, if not nearly everyone on the council, said expand where we are, where you're at.
Yes.
Is that not the direction that you're looking for? Or?
No, what we're looking for is whether there's financial backing behind that decision.
Okay, so the question on the table from the library staff and the library board's perspective is not where the expansion is going to take place. It's how the expansion at the present location would be financed.
Correct. So I think there is discussion that that's taken over the summer that you're referring to with the downtown task force, all of that came to place, and the library board's response to that is right now our direction that we've had from you is this expansion in this location, and so until we hear differently from you, we can't act on anything that came out of the downtown task force.
Okay, thank you, Jeannie.
Alderman Painter and then Burgess.
I'm just wondering if they have an opportunity to come back and ask us this same question after the Downtown Task Force has given their presentation.
I think that would be essential.
They could?
I think it would be essential.
Right, but as Jeff will back me up, that tonight you have to pass a certain amount or an estimated amount. And so essentially tonight is the cap, the highest that you could pass the levy, and then in December you'll come back and pass the adopted levy, and so at that point you can't go higher than your number tonight. But
I'm not sure about that, but they definitely have to set the estimate.
But I think Alderwoman Painter's actually talking, if I'm interpreting her question, is that hers is more of a policy question. If we approve this, regardless of that, obviously, there has to be further conversation.
No, that's not what I was asking.
You're asking if the decision
She
has
answered
to
my
be made.
question. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry, misunderstood. Okay. Amelia, you did, okay, Amelia, all right. Is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we pass the estimated property tax levy of $4,823,604.
As presented.
That number does not roll.
It does, unfortunately. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion. This is Alderman Bray. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Oh, I'm sorry. I told you this yesterday when we talked, is that sometimes I forget. Did you have anything else to add?
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, if everyone will vote, and then Alderwoman Bray, I will ask you for your vote, which I'm guessing, given that you seconded, I think I can predict that fairly well. Okay. The motion carries. Alderwoman Bray, are you an aye on that motion?
I vote aye.
Okay, the motion carries 7-2. There are 2 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Sage and Alderman Painter.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Why isn't that going away? There we go. Okay. We move on to the consideration of approving the 2017 tax levy for the city of Bloomington. And we have a very brief presentation by Alderwoman, by Patty Lynn Silva. I've just promoted you, sorry.
The words out. I'd like to just take a moment, if I could. Thank you for allowing me to give this presentation. And I'd like to just spend a couple minutes, if I could, on the tax levy in general. I know everybody kind of likes this dollar bill, so I resurrected it. And for the public's information, it's always important to point out that the city receives about 13 cents on the dollar for every dollar paid in property tax. So the city doesn't actually receive all of the taxes that are collected, but we receive that 13 cents. And these numbers are actually from 15. They're a little outdated, but they're not too bad. So tonight we're asking you as well to adopt an estimate of the city's property tax levy, excluding the library, on this motion. And we're not proposing any increase. We're proposing to keep the dollars flat. A little background of what the proposed tax levy goes to, which is essentially most of it goes for pensions and some debt service and some public parks. Only $2 million goes for general operations in the general fund of the whole $20 million. Just kind of putting that in perspective. We've provided a little bit of history here. I do want to point out something that's a bit important. If you look at the growth in our real property on this chart, if you can see it, going back to 07, 08, 09, there was some nice growth from year to year. Of course, we hit the real estate bust, and we've been on the uphill trend, but we've actually lost some value in our EAVs in tax appeals process, and I can just go forward. So if you look at the 2015 tax levy, we have to adopt the tax levy on the preliminary estimate, which in 2015 was 1.824. The final came in at 1.811, which is about a $12 million difference. That difference is solely based on tax appeals. In 2016, we adopted the levy at with an estimate of a 1.865 EAV, which came in at 1.851, which is about a $14 million decrease. That is a combination of about $7 million in tax appeals and about $6 million in an expanded disabled veterans exemption, which is important for us to understand. In year one of that expanded exemption, we lost about $6 million on our EAV. That's year one. The county is anticipating that is going to grow quite a bit. So what we did this year is we went back to last year's final EAV to be conservative, and we're not going to proceed with the small increase in real estate taxes to be conservative. So just want to understand that. I hope that's more clear than mud. So essentially what happens is people, of course, can appeal their taxes in times where their values are going up. People appeal more. But on top of that, if you're over 70% disabled veteran in the state of Illinois now, you pay no property tax. And they've expanded quite a bit in layers underneath that. So there's the reference for you guys going forward, but we just don't know how much that really is going to add up to in the long run. So we're proposing again to keep the rate flat, which you can see here from the 16 to the 17. And those are the categories that it goes into, and when you adopt the final ordinance, that's how it breaks out. That's exactly where the money goes. We can't change that. We added in the library here. We did add in the increase just for positive thoughts. We went ahead and did that. And
it's always important to point out that we're adopting the tax levy way before the budget. And it's kind of an isolated thing, which you guys know. But in having said that, we did kind of propose a budget timeline here for you all, for you to take a look at. And if that doesn't meet with your expectations, we're happy to change it. And then we just have an appendix that's chock full of definitions and lots of other historic data that you guys may find helpful. And then the disabled veterans exemption table. With that,
Thank you very much, Patty
answer
Lynn.
any questions for
Questions of Patty Lynn?
I just had one.
Yeah, absolutely. Alderman Matthey.
So the council has adopted a program where we're paying an accelerated schedule towards pensions in order to save interest money, and because we have to get to 90% funded by 2042, I think it was. When's the next time that number increases? Because it was on a staggered chart where it kept increasing up how much we were paying towards those past pension debts.
That increases every single year.
It is every year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was just thinking, I couldn't find the chart the other day, and I was just thinking about what does next year look like already. So.
It looks big.
And just to clarify, I believe our goal is 100%, not 90.
And that's one of the reasons why we're funding more. We're not only funding more than the state minimum, we're also seeking 100% funding rather than 90. So our numbers are always more steep. I was just looking at it. We're in year 3. I come back to you each year to kind of let you know how that's going. It's not all funded from the property tax, and that's important to point out. We also have raised utility tax as well for the pensions. But the city has made a strong commitment, and I think at this point we've funded probably over $3 million more than what's been required. So I'd be happy to come back and do a brief presentation on that for you.
Personally, I would love to see an updated one of where we are, because I know some of the estimates of what we needed to pay changed, and I would like that information. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. Alderwoman Schmidt.
Timeline question as well, and maybe this is for City Manager Rasmussen in terms of when we will see our capital or CIP options and begin to make those priorities and talk about any way of paying for those. How does that fit in with the tax levy conversation?
I don't know. I'll have to work that out, and I'll get an answer back to you as soon as I can.
Okay. I mean, I think that the sooner we have those conversations, the better for us in terms of budget planning for FY19.
I understand you completely.
So.
If I could add one thing to that, this particular tax levy does not have any allowance in it for any added capital. It's staying status quo.
Right.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Right. That's on my mind.
Right. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Alderman Blatt.
Thank you. I kind of alluded to this earlier. I know that it's always wonky the way this has to turn out just by kind of state law. Ideally, I'd like to see something where if we increase the library tax, then we would then reduce the city concurrently. However, we could work that out. Because at the end of the day, it's still the same taxpayer, and however we figure it out, that would be ideal in my situation. I'd also note that on the timeline here, the sooner we can get the proposed budget distributed, the better. I know that's always taxing on staff to get that done sooner, but that helps frame our conversation, get meaningful feedback from the public, so we're actually talking about real documents, real numbers, and real direction.
Okay. Other comments? Thank you so much, Patty Lynn. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And thank you, all the staff that have been involved in that.
And they've worked really hard, and a special shout out to Scott Rathman, our new budget manager, and all his hard work.
Great. Thank you. At this point, is there a motion dealing with our 2017 tax levy estimate for the city of Bloomington?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Okay. Moved by Alderwoman Howman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Blatt. Any further discussion? Okay. If you go ahead and vote, obviously a positive vote is in favor of the tax levy as presented. Alderwoman Bray, how do you vote on the tax levy?
Alderwoman Bray votes aye on the tax levy.
Okay. Well, that means we are unanimous. 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much. And we move on to our last riveting topic of the evening, And this is sorry, presentation and discussion for proposed council meeting and council-related boards and commission meeting dates for the 2018 calendar. And we're going to go ahead and start with our distinguished clerk, Cherry Lawson. Hit it, Cherry.
Thank you. Good evening. Each year, before the end of the calendar year, the city clerk's office, in conjunction with other city departments who have staff liaisons that staff the boards and commissions for the city, compile their yearly calendar that we bring forward to the council. Well, this year, the former city manager asked that this item be brought forward for some discussion, as in 2016, there were 4 cancellations of the Committee of the Whole meetings and 2 cancellations this year of the COW meetings. And so with my discussion with him, he asked that council take a look at their schedules and determine whether or not the dates that are set for those 2 meetings I guess, are appropriate with your schedules. And if so, then this item will be brought back at the next meeting for council action.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there, as the item 10 is noted, it says, and I'm quoting, presentation and discussion on the proposed schedule for council action and council-related boards and commission meeting dates of the 2018, calendar year. So there is no action taken this evening. This is merely to begin whatever discussion we might have. If we are unprepared to make a discussion or to have a discussion, we think we need to take a look at our calendars first, then clearly we're not acting tonight. And so this is not speak now or forever hold your peace. This is just the first wave.
First wave.
So,
and then just email me and let me know.
Okay. Start with Alderwoman Howman and then Black, and we'll go around.
I'd like to see the Committee of the Whole meetings maintained for once a month. If they need to be canceled, if there's no business to come before the council, that's fine, but I think having them on the calendar is prudent.
Okay. Alderman Black.
I see our former esteemed colleague Jim Fruin out there, and he was a big proponent of this, and I agree with him in that we should be at least putting on the calendar with the county and normal the 5th Monday of the month or whatever it is. If we do that now, we can plan ahead. We can always cancel it. There's always business we should be talking on a regional level, and maybe we put it on the books for us, and if they follow suit, great. If not, then we can just take it off. I know it'll be tough for the counties that do their meetings in the morning. It might be tough in the evening for them, but always a good
Maybe
thing.
they'll get used to it.
It's a lifestyle change. So we always have business, whether it be water supply, regional economic development, whatever it might be. Let's just get on the books, and that way we can always cancel it if need be.
So let's just to be clear for the audience and for the record, you're suggesting that we keep that a difference in previous practice, that the 5th Mondays of the month we have a joint meeting with the normal town council and the county,
and I would just call it the intergovernmental meeting placeholder. And if we cancel it.
It could just be the city council. Or the town council, of normal and us. It could include the county board.
Whoever appropriate for whatever topic at the time, I defer to staff for that.
Okay, and you are speaking just in support of that for all the reasons you've suggested.
Strongly supportive of that.
Strongly supportive of that. Okay.
And I will go along with that. I think it's a great idea.
Strongly supported again by Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay. Is there any opposition to that?
Express strong opposition to it. Almost violent opposition. No, seriously. No, I think it would be fine, but I think we probably should consult with them and see what their pleasure
they
is.
are interested.
They're interested?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, of the mayor-manager's lunches, they're very interested in promoting regional cooperation. Okay. I wouldn't even say especially one or the other. Both were. Okay. Both county and town and normal.
Oh, good. And I'm very interested in seeing Alderman Black after the meeting. Uh-oh.
We better escort him out to his car. And thank you, former Alderman Jim Fruin, who's in the audience, because he had been a big proponent of that for a very long time, and I think that was it was a great idea. Any other comments on this schedule? And again, this is just first reactions. And roughly, I'm looking at you, Steve, do we have any idea when we might bring this back for final? Well, obviously it has to be before the end of the year, so I'm assuming at this point.
Sure.
Oh, Cherry, you have an opinion. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Cherry.
No, I was just going to say, I'll try to bring it back by the next council meeting, but if not, then it'll be the first meeting in December.
First meeting in December at the latest. Okay. Alderman Matthey.
I was just looking at this again, and I'm not sure, unless I'm missing it, that the new citizens review boards are listed in this. Am I missing it somewhere in here?
Which one?
The police citizen review board?
No, that one, it has not.
They haven't met yet.
Okay, that's fair.
That's the, yeah, I think
I
that
didn't know
was-
if we needed to put a placeholder in for them as well or something.
We,
I'm not sure.
does anybody happen to know if they're going to meet before?
Once they meet, then we will get that published following.
Yeah.
If they don't meet,
Okay, thank you. Good eye. All right. Okay, at this point, is there a motion to adjourn? And we will come back. Let's give us one extra whole minute for a bathroom break at 7:01. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by several people. Moved by Alderman Black, second by Alderwoman Howman. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. The special meeting is adjourned.